Hello, everyone. Welcome to I for Inclusion and to the second episode of our talk show, Let's Talk Inclusion. Today's topic again is autism and the pandemic. I'm Manobina Chakraborty, the host for today's show. I'm an inclusive education consultant and autism advocate based in India. And our expert on the show today is Ms. Charlene Tait, Deputy Chief Executive of Scottish Autism. Hi, Charlene. Welcome to I for Inclusion.
Hi, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
So, Charlene, could you please give our viewers an introduction to your life and work?
I'm happy to do that. I think it always makes me feel a little bit scared and a little bit humbled when someone calls me an expert, because I consider myself still to be learning. Because the one thing I have definitely learned working in the field of autism is that you're never finished learning. So I'll try and give you the short version of my career and my interest in autism. I've worked in autism for the last 30 years. I know you're all very surprised by that, because I don't look old enough to have been working for 30 years. But I have, and most of that has been with the organisation I'm with now. The organisation was started in the 1960s by a group of parents who really wanted more for their children, and it was called the Scottish Society for Autistic Children when I first joined it, even though when I joined I was working with adults. So somebody at some point realised autistic children grow into autistic adults, and the organisation changed its name to the Scottish Society for Autism, and then ultimately just Scottish Autism. So during the time, I've had two periods of time with the organisation. The first 14 years I spent with Scottish Autism were very much about developing supports for families, and that was a real challenge, because at the time there was very little known about autism. There were very little sort of specialist services around autism. I didn't know anything about autism. I remember going to the local library when I got my interview for my job and said, "Do you have any books about autism?" And the woman went away for about half an hour and came back with one book. And now, daily getting, notifications about books and drowning and stuff that we know, but sometimes I don't know if that's any more helpful, because people get very confused. Anyway, I had various jobs with the organisation, but the one that I really prized was when I got to be Scotland's first autism field worker. And what that meant was I got asked by families who had a concern that their child might be autistic, or who had just had a diagnosis, and I would go and meet with them and talk through their concerns. And in that process, I got to meet literally hundreds of autistic children and young people and their families, and that was my best education in autism, without a doubt. And then I left the organisation in 2004 for 7 years. I went to be a lecturer and eventually course director in postgraduate studies in autism at the University of Strathclyde. And that was an education. That was my passion is practice and family support and getting things right on the ground for people. And then I suddenly had to think about autism in a much more academic way and help people make sense and understanding of autism through academic learning and applying that academic learning to their practice. But I was enticed back to Scottish Autism 10 years ago now, and I'm now the Deputy Chief Executive, which is my dream job, because I get to work across the organisation, developing practice, trying to develop what we call practice-based research, a culture of inquiry in our services, where our practitioners are encouraged to think about why their approaches to support are helpful, or why things might not be helpful, to understand autism from the very, very personal perspective of the 400 people we support. And I also get to do work with Scottish Government, trying to influence policy and practice through policy at that level. And also involved in lots of national and international collaborations. But the thing that I absolutely love the best is when I can engage with autistic people and can engage with parents, and they aren't always positive stories. They're sometimes very challenging stories to hear, but I absolutely love the unique worldview of autistic people, and that's what's kept me working in this field for so long. As an organisation, we are mainly a service providing organisation. We have a school for autistic children. We have services for autistic adults all over Scotland, from the very, very top of Scotland down to the tip of the borders. And the services range from residential services to 24 hours a day, to outreach services where people maybe see our support staff for several hours a week. We have day opportunities where people can get involved in horticulture, art, music, anything that they're interested in, really. And then we have what's my main area of responsibility is the Centre for Practice Innovation, and that's where our practitioner research is driven from, our staff learning and development, our networking, our connections across different countries and different networks. And so I really am a very, very fortunate person that I've got my dream job. And what is it they say? Do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know if that's true. It is hard work, but I feel that I'm part of a movement. I feel that I work for a cause, for a better life for autistic people. And I feel very privileged to be able to do that. So that's my background.
That's really amazing, Charlene. Thank you very much for your precious time. And I'm sure that you are very busy these days, as you say that there are some policy making changing, many various things are going on. Thank you very much that you have taken out some time for us. And how is life in Scotland during these uncertain times otherwise? Are you working from home?
Yes, I am, and I've covered up my paint samples that I had put on my wall here because I was trying to choose a new colour for my little office. We are working from home, like every country, every corner of the world. COVID has had a very dramatic effect, and I am busy, but I'm never ever too busy to have these kinds of conversations, because I think they're really important. That worldwide community around autism, I think, is something I'm really passionate about. That knowledge exchange and that sharing, I think, is vitally important, and never really more so now. Because one of the key things that we have learned through this pandemic is that what people need and want is actually very little. They want information, they want certainty, they want social connectedness, they want to know that somebody is there and paying attention when they have needs. As an organisation, it's obviously hit us, in certain places harder than others. So all our day opportunities and outreach services that we offer to people, they've been suspended. But we have fantastic staff in Scottish Autism, and the creativity and the enthusiasm and their desire to stay connected to the people we support has been absolutely overwhelming. One of the big things for us as an organisation is that we've always enjoyed and worked very hard for a positive relationship with the Scottish Government. And that has been really enhanced during this time. The Scottish Government, I think in particular, have recognised the role that organisations like ours have. And so from very early on in the pandemic, we've had a seat at the table. We were invited to be part of a key stakeholder group. So that was initiated by the Minister for Mental Health, and our organisation, along with several other key stakeholders, initially met on a weekly basis and now continue to meet on a fortnightly basis and are talking about, okay, how do we transition out of this situation, but how do we make sure the things that we've learned that are really effective and work for people, that we keep a hold of them and we don't just go back to the same old, same old.
And Charlene, exactly here we seek your expert advice. During the COVID crisis, many families who have children with autism are coping with the suspension of both school and essential services. Additionally, children with autism often have difficulty adjusting to disruptions of their routine and environment. So, our question to you is how to ensure education and sound mental health of children and young people with autism now and in the turbulent post-COVID times.
I have a lot to say about this, so let me try and organise my thoughts. I think the first thing to say is that education for all children, including autistic children, doesn't just happen in a classroom. It happens in every situation in the family home, out having a walk. Children are kind of almost automatically programmed to be learning. And that the type of learning that doesn't happen in a classroom is just as important as the stuff that does. And I think that what actually this situation can do is give us an opportunity to enable and support autistic children to be a little bit more in control of their learning, to pursue things they're interested in, and to maybe use the things that they're interested in to kind of, bolster some of that academic learning. I think that it's about there's been a phrase that's been used a lot in relation to our education system about children falling behind and needing to catch up. I think that's a false paradigm, really, because falling behind what, needing to catch up with whom. I think that you in this situation more than ever, you need to embrace the individuality of children and families and realise that some families are more able to adapt and accommodate this change than others. And there's a great word that I learned, and it's the word DIRM, DIRM, and that stands for does it really matter? And I think that in terms of a child's mental health and well-being and parental health and well-being, that is a key question. Does it really matter? And I think that if an activity or a project or a piece of schoolwork is going to cause disproportionate stress for the child or the parent, does it really matter? And quite often when you ask yourself that question, the amount of things that really matter, they're pretty small. So I think that the key to surviving the stress of this is to reappraise the whole situation, to recognise that learning isn't just about school and that it can happen in all different ways, to give a little bit of control to the child in terms of what they are interested in learning and pursuing, and to manage your own stress and expectations. You can't be a school. You can't bring a school into your house. You can only do what you can do. And you might have to do that differently because of the way your child thinks. If your child associates number work or literacy work with being in a classroom, you're going to generate a lot of stress, probably, by trying to take that exact same approach and bring it into the house. So what are the ways that you can support and enable your child to still continue to learn those things, but in that different environment of home? And I'm really aware when I say this here there are vast cultural differences between what happens in Scotland and what happens in India. I absolutely respect that and understand that. And I've been lucky enough to work and engage with people from all around the world who have autistic children, who are autistic, who are parents of autistic children. And the cultures are different, but the autism is the same. The issues around cognition, around perhaps rigid thinking, some of the communication challenges, the drive and passion that autistic people have for the things that interest them, they're the same. And so we can utilise those qualities and strengths that autistic people have to bring in learning in a different context. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
So very much, very much.
I think to do that, there's a couple of things. I've written down some things because there's some things that I wanted to make sure that I said. So I think that in terms of autism and understanding autism, there's a man called Jim Sinclair. I don't know if you've heard of him. In the 90s, he's an autistic man, and he's one of the most leading autistic advocates, self-advocates. And I think what he says is really helpful in terms of managing stress. So what he says about autism is this is a quote from him. Autism isn't something a person has or a shell that a person is trapped inside. There's no normal child hidden behind the autism. Autism is a way of being. It is pervasive. It colours every experience, every sensation, perception, thought, emotion, and encounter, every aspect of existence. It's not possible to separate the autism from the person, and if it were possible, the person you'd have left would not be the same person you started with. And why I think that's important is I think acceptance is one of the key things to good mental health. Acceptance of yourself as an individual and an acceptance of others as they are. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't try to support and enable people to learn and grow and develop. It doesn't mean that people don't have challenges that will need, some kind of support, or that we don't worry about things. But what I think it takes us to is what are we actually trying to do for this individual? And it's fascinating now that we can engage with so many autistic people who tell us that they feel their autism is part of their identity. It's part of who they are, and they don't want that taken away. They want to learn to be who they are in the way they are. And I think that acceptance is a major step towards stress reduction for people. And I mean that on both sides. Stress is primarily transactional. If I'm stressed, I'm going to stress you out. And if you're stressed, you're going to stress me out. So there's an exchange of stress that goes on there. So, and some of that comes from trying to impose on people a way of living, a way of being, a way of thinking that is just not in their wiring. It's just not who they are. And I suppose if you think about it, if you think of something that's kind of fundamental to who you are, like an aspect of your personality, you might be very adventurous, you might like to, go abseiling and throw yourself over things, or you might be a very studious person, or you might be a very funny, very vivacious, very sociable person. And if someone's to come along and say, no, you can't be like that anymore because that doesn't fit with what we need you to be like, you're going to be sad, you're going to be stressed, you're going to feel less than you actually are. So I think a really big clue in surviving the mental stress of not just COVID, but life, is that acceptance of autistic people as who they are. And as I say, that doesn't mean that we don't try to teach people, but that unique worldview is something that has kept me working in autism for a long, long time. And I think that when we think about trying to fix people or change people, that's where a lot of stress comes in all round. And a really key thing, I think, for autistic people is to understand how they think and how they learn. Because when I see things go wrong in schools here in Scotland, or where families are having difficulty, it's often where people are trying to bend and twist and shape that autistic person to fit, rather than say, okay, that is the shape you are. I am going to build a world around you that works for you. So I hope that makes some sense. So I think in that respect, a lot of excuse me, the clue to surviving that, as I say, and managing that, and not just surviving, enjoying life with your autistic child, or as an autistic person or an autistic family, is to start really with yourself and ask yourself a few questions and be reflective, and to think about what your own values are and what your own beliefs are, and how that does or doesn't fit with the situation you're in. And I think the other thing is to recognise, for many, many years, people have been obsessed with people's behaviour, autistic behaviour, challenging behaviour, difficult behaviour. And I have a very, very simple mantra in life, and that is, when you feel well, you behave well. When I feel tired, when I feel hungry, when I'm stressed, when I'm worried about something, I don't behave as well as I might. I might be short with people, I might lose my temper, I might forget things, I might, just want to disengage and not speak to people. And I think when we start to understand some of the behaviour that we see in autistic people as a way of coping and as a stress response, then that leads us to do something different about it. So rather than think, how can we stop this behaviour and make this person behave, we start to think, how can I reduce the stress for that person? How can I enable that person to cope? Because some of what we see in what is being labelled as challenging behaviour or difficult behaviour is a coping mechanism. It's a way of dealing with something that's overwhelming, anxiety provoking, and exhausting for a lot of people. And so I think a real clue to supporting children and young people and managing your own mental health and well-being is to recognise what is coping. And that might look very non-traditional. It might look not a usual way of coping. So whereas I might, when I'm feeling anxious and stressed, I might go for a walk, I might pour a glass of wine, I might go and read a book, I might go and talk to a friend. Some of the autistic people I know will want to line things up and bring order to the world. They might want to flap and tap things. They might want to escape that situation and just get out of the air, and they don't mind who's in their way, they're going. So when we start to see these things as coping mechanisms, a big question for us is, how able are we to cope with those non-traditional coping mechanisms? And if we can't cope with them, what can we do to address that? And really understanding autism as a developmental condition, I think, is really, really important. Autism is often spoken about as a different way of being. It impacts on the way a person develops, and it impacts in a very uneven way. And I know from my time working in schools and families, people often get very distressed by, well, he could do it yesterday, why is he not doing it today? Or look, he can do all these really complicated maths equations. Why can't he tie his shoelaces? People get really, really kind of stressed and distressed by that. And that's that uneven profile that we see. And when you start with an understanding of development in autism, that gives you, I think, a much healthier understanding of the person in front of you. Rather than, and in Scottish Autism, we changed the way we approach our staff training. We would bombard our staff with all the, what is autism? Autism's this, autism's that. Autistic people can't do this, but oh, look, they can do that. We started with the very, very basics of human development and what that is, what typical development might look like, and why autistic development is different. Because if you have an autistic individual who's developing differently, and you continually look at them through the lens of typical development, you will always find them wanting in a way. You will always think, oh, they're behind on this, they should be doing more of that. They just are where they are. And I think it's really important to understand the development aspects of autism, and to accept that that's where people are in their development. And sometimes we try to push people too far beyond where they are at a particular stage of development, but also we underestimate people and their abilities to do things, and that's equally frustrating. I remember many, many years ago, working with a young man, and I just happened upon, he was doing some work with a member of staff, and it was around money and money recognition and what did this coin look like and what was it worth. And I kept seeing him tapping his head, and he was saying something, and I couldn't make out what he was saying. And I stopped and I listened, and what he was saying was, small boy, too easy, small boy, too easy. And what he was really saying to that member of staff is, you're patronising me. I know this. But because he had difficulties in the way he expressed himself with verbal communication, he had a bit of a speech impediment, people underestimated him, and he was angry, and he was telling us, hang on a minute, I can do this. So that understanding of development is really, really important. And I think that makes me think as well about communication and how that's expressed. Some people will tell you that all behaviour is communication. I'm not sure about that. I'm really not sure about that. But what I do know is that communication takes many, many forms, and that even people who say nothing, who are silent, have a great deal to say. And I think that it's understanding that particular communication style, the context where communication happens, when communication isn't happening, what facilitates it. It might be that you use more visual material. I know people who are very fluent, very verbal, but when they're very stressed, they can't use their language. They don't use verbal language. They sometimes express themselves at what might look like a behavioural level, or they become withdrawn and quiet, and they can't express their needs or their wants. And so that's not static either. You need to think about tuning into people's different ways of communication. So listening even when nothing is said. And I think that there's a great, there's a lovely organisation in Ireland, a young man called Adam Harris, and he has an organisation, he's autistic, and he's an organisation called As I Am. And the question that I suppose when I'm working with teachers or working with professionals, the question I think people really need to ask is, can you teach me as I am? Can you accept me as I am? Can you be alongside me as I am? And I think that's really fundamental to anything anybody needs to and wants to do with an autistic person. Do you want to pause there for a bit, or do you want me to continue?
As you please. I just want to say something here. Since I'm engaging with families across India who are sharing stories about how they are supporting their children with autism while schools are closed. And my collaborators in I for Inclusion also keep sharing stories of their countries. So all these stories reveal some common truths, as you also mentioned, Charlene. So no matter who you are or where you live, routines are an important part of life. The pain of change is real, and in many ways, autistic persons have felt this pain more intensely than their neurotypical peers. But change can also bring growth. One autistic child I know is learning to cook during this pandemic. An autistic teenager is mastering baking. Another boy is just starting to express his emotions on a digital platform. So many autistic people who typically cling to routine are actually learning to live with uncertainty and to let the future flap in the wind. Maybe when you don't have much options, only then you become interested to learn new things. Do you have any such stories to share with us, Charlie?
I think that what I've seen is really interesting. I unfortunately don't get to work so closely with children and young people, but I do engage a lot with uh, people through different platforms. And I think just to echo what you've said, one of the things that we've heard from a lot of families is that actually for a lot of our children who have been out of school, our schools are open now, but they were out of school for a long time, they actually thrived. They were less stressed. Like you say, they took learning on in a different way. They adapted to the change because the social pressure of being at school was absolutely huge. And we can learn from that. We can absolutely learn from that. We've had some lovely examples in our own services where our staff have, so for example, one of the young men we support had a routine of going to the shop and buying, particular things, and that shop was closed. So they set up a shop in a hut in the garden, and they stocked it and they staffed it, and they did things a little bit differently to try and maintain some of the sameness, but still, it was different. And I think there are all sorts of things. People have been making music. They've been engaging in online Zumba and dance classes and such things that they wouldn't have typically done. And I think that the key lesson for me in all of this is that people need people. And autistic people need people. But they need people to come towards them. They need people to step in and say, okay, this is not for you. This is very difficult for you. How can I change and adapt to that? We had a lovely example in one of our services where some of the ladies painted, they're called little fairy doors. They're little wooden doors, and they went into the woods and put them on the trees and made a sort of fairy trail so that people could see them when they were out walking. All sorts of lovely creative things. And that's the thing, out of necessity comes creativity. There are people who've been very stressed and distressed, and all the issues with wearing masks and having people around you wear masks. They're really difficult for people. But I think now more than ever, it's important to recognise the things that are important to the autistic person. And a lot of people who I know and have met down the years, they've got an attachment to things. They want to carry stuff around with them. It might be something to flap, it might be an object. And quite often we're desperate to take those things away from people so that they look like that, they don't look like they're autistic and they look like they're normal and all of that. But those things are quite grounding, and they're anchoring for people. So we shouldn't be in such a hurry to take away the familiar either. The things that people find give them a feeling of certainty and a feeling of well-being. But I've been totally, marveling at the creativity of the people in our services and the flexibility of the autistic people we support. People who are thought to be inflexible, not able to change, not able to adapt, who cling to routine. Sometimes it's the people around them who cling to all of those things. So I think structure with flexibility has always been the key thing for autistic learners. And we've had all of that pulled away from us. And I think autistic people have coped admirably.
Amazing, amazing. I'm so glad to know all these things. And don't you think, along with children and young people on the autistic spectrum, sound mental health is equally important for their parents too? So, what is your advice for the parents?
Absolutely. It's critical. And I think that the key thing I can say is to recognise stress is it's a very real thing, and you will know that because you'll be feeling it. It is transactional, and I think the more you can bring your own self into a better, relaxed state, the calmer things are all round. And I meet lots of parents to say, I don't have any time for me, and I don't, I can't do, any of these lovely relaxation things, and I don't have time for myself. That's where I think the Durham thing comes in. Does it really matter? So what can you let go? What do you feel you really need to continue to do? But I think to recognise that it is stressful is part of the way there. And that actually not everything has to have a purpose. Not everything has to be educational. Not everything has to have great meaning. One of the lovely things that I heard from one of our services is they're just having fun with it. This is a service for people who are a little bit older, who are getting older, and they've been running around playing hide and seek. They've been painting windows. They've been baking cakes and eating them and having a high old time to themselves. And I think that life is short, and life just now is particularly difficult, and we're all living with this constant anxiety and fear of the virus and all the rest of it. But I think that, maybe some reprioritising, if you don't quite finish the schoolwork, if you don't do any schoolwork that day, if you don't manage to, sweep the carpets or cook a dinner and you eat, a sandwich, it doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. And I think that when you start to think of health in that more holistic way, things can feel a little bit better. When you give yourself permission for things not to matter, that takes an enormous amount of stress off of you. And I know some people don't have the personality that can do that. But really, and the other thing is, there's a very simple, it's a lovely wee thing is the 3 good things. What 3 good things happened today? Because it's really easy in a day like, days like now where everything feels the same to think it's all rubbish and it's all sad. But actually, if at the end of the day you think, okay, let me think about 3 good things that happened today, rather than lying awake thinking about the 5 horrible things that happened, what were the 3 good things that happened today? And even if that's, I got through today, I got dressed today, we ate a cooked meal today, whatever that is, I think it's finding the gratification in little things. And I think one of the things that's come out through the pandemic is that we're all getting a bit of a feel for what it might be like for autistic people and their families most of the time, to feel a little bit isolated and a little bit disconnected, and to feel, our world is very small. So I think that, you might be met with a little bit more understanding than you have been before. People might have a bit more empathy for people. I know that's certainly something that, you know, a lot of disabled activists in the UK have been pushing on social media. You know, now this is kind of welcome to my world, you know. I think, though, ultimately, well-being is a personal thing. And the things that help and support my well-being wouldn't help and support your well-being. But the key thing is to prioritise it and recognise it, and to put as much effort into that as you do into supporting your child, because it's a balancing act. And I think it's that thing about the dynamic of stress and the dynamic of anxiety that just grows and grows and grows and comes out of control. So if we can have transactional stress, we can have transactional happiness, and we can have transactional well-being, and we can have transactional health. So if we think about, you know, everyone in the family is important. Everyone in the family is important. And an investment in yourself is an investment in your child.
Very true, Charlene. And as a professional, I always felt that parent empowerment is the key to success for a child with autism. In our school, Saran Foundation, we have 4 parents working with us. All of them are trained in educational and behavioral support for children on the spectrum. I have always found that parents who are taught specific behavior management skills saw a dramatic improvement in their child's behavior. Therefore, I very strongly recommend parents to get professional training as much as possible. We have no idea how long this situation will continue. So the best the parents can do now is to empower themselves. That's what I feel. What is your take on that, Charlene?
So it's similar, but maybe different. I think that empowering yourself comes in many, many forms. I think that understanding your individual child kind of automatically leads to understanding why they might behave in a particular way. I think for autistic people, like any other people, it's relationships that really matter. It's trust, acceptance, love, those happiness. Those are the things that really, really matter. I think when you have an autistic child, all those natural parenting elements are there. You love your child. You want a trusting, loving, happy relationship with your child. You might need to have a little bit of other information to help you to support and enable your child. And I think that there's so many good things out there. I would urge people to focus on the relationship and the person more than, so think about who people are rather than what they do. I know it's the behaviour sometimes that causes the trauma and causes the difficulty, but when we kind of get underneath that and think about the person, I think that's important. Scottish Autism has an online resource called Right Click, and it's a whole range of video presentations talking about all sorts of different aspects of autism. And you can access that via our website. So anybody is welcome to access that. If you just want to check Scottish Autism's website, you'll get a lot of information there. And that's, I think, the best approach for me, is to get the general information, but then to really know and understand your child and bring that information in there. I think people do need empowerment. Where I think parents need it most is when they come up against professionals who don't always listen to parents, who don't always recognise that child may present very differently at home to how they might present in school or in other settings. And that's where I think having that extra knowledge is particularly helpful. But that in itself brings us stress. So I I think as a parent, I have a son, he's not autistic. All I wanted to do was have a happy, loving relationship with my son. I wanted him to have a lovely life and to trust me and to go on and be exactly who he wants to be. And I think that's all most parents want. And, why not? Whether your child's got autism or not, that's possible. That's where it's at. It's about love, it's about trust, it's about relationships, and it's about acceptance, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Charlene, for your valuable advice and guidance. It was extremely enriching talking to you today. And I thank you on behalf of everybody in I for Inclusion. And we look forward to impactful discussions like this in future. So any concluding advice for us, Charlene?
Thank you so much. I always think it's a privilege. It always surprises me that people want to know what I think. But I'm very pleased to share my thoughts with you. And I really just want to end by wishing you all well and good health, and that we get to the other side of this and get vaccinated and get back together and start to enjoy each other in the physical world again. But in the meantime, it's been a great privilege to do this with you, and I very much appreciate being asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. And yes, of course, I look forward to meeting you in person in Scotland next year.
You'd be very welcome. I'll get the kettle on.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to our viewers. We will come back soon with another expert on the third episode of Let's Talk Inclusion soon. So please keep an eye on our Facebook page for further announcements. See you soon. Till then, goodbye, all of you. Bye, Charlene. Thank you very much.